Hello and welcome to Train Signal. This is A+ Essentials using printers and scanners. This is part of Train Signal Fast Track CBT Video CompTIA A+. In this video, our overall goal is to help you understand the fundamentals of how to use printers and scanners. We'll talk about the different types of printers and scanners, components of printers and scanners, different interfaces that connect printers and scanners, how to configure printers and scanners, and finally, troubleshooting of printers and scanners. So we'll be talking a lot about printers and scanners, needless to say. First off, let's talk about our A+ exam objectives. In this video, it's our goal to help you prepare for Objective 4.1 and 4.2. 4.1 says you should be able to identify the fundamental principles of using printers and scanners. You should be able to identify differences between types of printers and scanner technology, names, purposes, and characteristics, consumables, identify the purposes and characteristics of interfaces, and those different interface types: network, parallel, USB, serial, firewall, firewire, wireless, and SCSI. And then Objective 4.2 says you should be able to identify basic concepts of installing, configuring, optimizing, and upgrading printers and scanners. For example, how to install and configure printers and scanners, power and connect the device, update the device drivers, configure options for default settings, print a test page, and optimize printer performance, including printer settings such as trace switching, spool settings, device calibration, and media types. So those are our A+ objectives that we're going to help prepare you for in this video on printers and scanners. Alright, so we'll talk about printer types first off. Printers are output devices that put our text or graphics onto paper or other surfaces. These are considered output devices, so mice and keyboards were input devices. That means things were coming in from those devices. With printers, primarily the communication is going out of the computer to the printer. And there's many different types of printers. So there's impact printers. These would be like dot matrix or daisy wheel. There's bubble jet. These would be printers that have ink cartridges and spray out ink. There's thermal printers, printers that use heat. There's plotters that use like colored paint pencils along a large paper. Then there's laser printers, and color laser printers are becoming more and more popular. Now, make sure that you know your laser printers and their components very well for the A+ exam. So we'll start off our discussion on printers and scanners by talking about impact printers. Impact printers use an inked ribbon, much like a typewriter, and there's two different types of impact printers that I'm going to talk about. The first one is a dot matrix printer. The second one is a daisy wheel printer. Now, dot matrix printers use rows of pins that make dots as they press on the inked ribbon and as the carriage travels across the paper. The dots form letters and graphics. Now, image quality is poor, and the best that they can do is what they call near letter quality print, using 24 pins. They're very loud, but they can also be very fast. The next one is a daisy wheel printer. A daisy wheel printer uses a rotating wheel with all characters on the wheel. A hammer mashes the characters from the wheel onto the paper to create words. They cannot do graphics, and they're limited by the characters on the wheel. So both of these, the dot matrix and the daisy wheel, have a ribbon. And that ribbon is where the pins push on and then push the ink onto the paper, or the daisy wheel pushes a piece of the wheel onto that ribbon and pushes a letter or number onto the paper. Down here we have a picture of a dot matrix printer. This is an Oki Data wide format dot matrix printer. You can see dot matrix printers usually have tractor feeds. I don't know if you can see the little holes in the side of the paper there that pull the paper through. It's on a tractor feed unit, and it's got little gears with teeth that pull the paper using these tractor feed automatic feeding mechanisms here. Now, bubble jet printers are also called ink dispersion printers, which means they squirt out the ink from a cartridge in some way. Now, even though bubble jet printers have replaced inkjet printers, because bubble jet printers are cleaner than inkjet printers and better quality, people still call inkjet printers and bubble jet printers the same thing. And even I do it. I say, I need a new inkjet printer for the office. But technically, today's ink dispersion printers are bubble jet printers. So we'll talk about the difference here in just a second. But basically, bubble jet printers squirt out bubbles, sort of blobs of ink, but they're highly, you know, targeted. They're not just squirting out like paintballs onto the paper. They're very systematic in the way they do it. And bubble jet printers, again, are cleaner than inkjet printers and better quality. So what makes up a bubble jet printer? Well, first off, there's the print head. The print head contains 100 to 200 small nozzles, and it's usually combined with the ink cartridge. It's in the ink cartridge. Now, sometimes there's multiple print heads on a printer, such as a bubble jet printer where you have different colors. Maybe you have cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, 4 different colors, and those 4 colors are used to mix together to make a single color or a graphic on the paper. So you can have an inkjet printer or bubble jet printer that has only black. You can have one that has black and then a multicolor cartridge, or then you can have one that has 4 different or a number of different colors, and then those colors are mixed together to make the colors you need on the paper. So that's the print head. The next one is the carriage. The carriage is also called the belt or the stepper motor, and it's used to propel the print head horizontally across the paper. It's the important mechanical concept of a printer that most people don't think a lot about. Most people focus on the print cartridge, but the carriage is very important. It's highly mechanical, gears on each side with grease, and it moves this print head across the paper left and right at a very precise interval. Now, some of these use a stabilizer bar to do their job. Now let's talk about paper feed mechanisms. All right, paper feed brings paper into the printer for printing. It uses the following components. First up, pickup rollers. Pickup rollers can get dirty. Pickup rollers are right in the front of the paper, or right in the front of the printer, and they turn and they feed this paper into the printer. There's separator pads to separate the paper, the stack of paper to the piece of paper that's being brought in. There's the pickup stepper motor. This is the motor that's used to power the gears that turn the pickup rollers and bring the paper in the printer. There's the paper type or the gravity and the paper feed source. So say you have a really heavy construction paper, it might take it a little bit longer to feed that in, or multiple sheets of that in, than it does just regular 8.5 by 11. Then there's the paper feed sensor. So the paper feed sensor knows if there's more printer left in the printer that it can feed in. Many times there's also paper feed sensors that know that the output bin that holds the paper you've been printing has become full because you haven't taken the printouts out of it. All right, next up we're going to talk about the electronics of the printer. So it has mechanical pieces and then it has electronics that make it work. Now every printer has some kind of electronic brain. That brain is broken up into 3 parts on a bubble jet printer. First off, there's the printer control circuits. This is the circuit board that tells the printer what to do and what to print and how. There's the printer power circuit. That connects the printer to electricity. It contains a transformer and it can be either internal or external to the printer. A lot of times you see a big external block that hooks up to the AC outlet on the wall. That's the transformer for the printer. Then there's the printer interface circuit. This is what connects to the printer to the USB connector or the LAN and then sends your printing data over the control circuit. So the print job comes in, say, from the USB connector to the printer interface circuit. It processes it, and then it sends it to the printer control circuit to be printed. All right, so here's some tasks that I highly recommend that you perform. First off, obtain a bubble jet printer. And you're doing these things so that you can learn about the internal workings of bubble jet printers, because you'll be asked some questions on the test, and it's much easier to be able to answer those questions if you've actually seen the inside of a bubble jet printer. It's like asking somebody how a car works if they've only read a book. They've never actually opened up the hood and looked inside and maybe taken some things apart. So what I recommend you do is pick up a bubble jet printer, or go to a friend's house or relative's house or a coworker's office and look at their bubble jet printer and just learn about it. So first you find one, then you go through, locate the print head and the print carriage. Next, find the local paper tray, or locate the paper tray, I'm sorry. Locate the paper feed sensor, locate the pickup rollers, and then locate the separator pads. And now I'm going to go to a photo of a bubble jet printer, and let's take a look at where we would find some of these things. So if I go over here to my inkjet photo printers, photos, and I'm going to open up the first photo here. Alright, this is an all-in-one inkjet printer, or bubble jet printer, and you can see the paper goes in here in the bottom, it comes up, it goes under the print head that's inside here somewhere, it loops around and it comes back out the front upside down. So that's the paper path. It's important to know the paper path. Alright, you can see it a little bit better here, how the paper goes in the front right here, loops around, and it comes back out and lays across the top. So I'm sure that inside here, where this paper is, just inside there, that's where the paper sensor is, right? It's got to know if there's paper that's coming into the printer, or if it's all out and it needs to tell you to add some more paper. So that's where the printer sensor would be. So we found the paper feed sensor. All right, the pickup rollers. The pickup rollers are going to be just inside here as well. So you stick the paper in there, and these rollers that have kind of a rubber coating on them turn, and then they push on the paper and they feed a piece of paper up into the printer. So that would be the pickup rollers. All right, the paper tray. This printer doesn't really have much of a paper tray. This is it right here, this little kind of square thing. That's the paper tray. But bigger inkjet printers or bubble jet printers will have dedicated paper trays. Another one is the print head and print carriage. That's going to be inside here, and I'll show you where the print head and the ink cartridges are stored in just a second. All right, let's move on to the next picture here. So here's the where the ink cartridges go, and you can see this printer takes two ink cartridges. One is all black, that's this one here, and this one over here is a color ink cartridge, which isn't in there right now. And in the bottom of these ink cartridges is the print head. So this snaps up in here, and then these two ink cartridges move left and right, horizontal across the paper, slowly printing the image or the text or the report on your paper before your paper spit out upside down. So these just move back and forth, being told where to print their ink onto the paper. All right, this is an example of a photo printer. This is a specialized inkjet printer just used for printing photos. So you see here a little blank photo paper is inserted, and then the printer prints out photos, and they come out the front. They come out the front right down here. So actually this printer has slots for memory cards, different types of memory cards, and a USB port. You can download the photos you took with your camera directly to this printer. On the screen you can review those photos, and then you can choose to print them or delete them. So we talked about our list of tasks that you should go perform on a bubble jet printer. Right now let's look at the process as to how a bubble jet printer takes a document and prints it. So you're on your computer, you're viewing your word processing document or spreadsheet, you click print, and then what happens? Well, after that, the software sends the job to the printer driver. The printer driver is the software on your computer that understands how to communicate to your printer. In number 3 here it says the printer driver uses PDL, or the page description language, to convert the job to the printer's language. Number 4 says the data is sent to the printer via your interface. Your interface could be the network, USB, or whatever other type of interface you're using to talk to your printer. Number 5 says the printer stores the job in its internal buffer, so that job is downloaded from your computer to the printer. Next up, the printer begins cleaning the print head if the printer hasn't been printing lately. And it uses suction to do this on the print head. It sucks out the leftover ink that's left over on the print head. Next, the paper is fed from the paper tray using the pickup rollers into the printer. Now, if no paper is fed into the printer after a set timeout, the printer assumes that the paper is either jammed or the paper is out, and an alert is sent to the computer to let the user know they need to put in more paper. In number 8, it says the motor moves the print head across the paper and the print head prints. Now, dots are put on the paper in either black or color, and multiple dots are used many times to make different colors. Next, after a single line has been printed, the paper feed motor moves the paper one line. So it goes across one line, the print head does. Then the paper feed motor moves the paper a little bit, and then the print head moves across the paper again, prints more. Then the print head motor moves the paper again. The print head prints, the paper's moved again, and so on until the entire page is printed. Now the paper feed motor feeds the paper until it's ejected. So when the printing's done, then the paper is fed out and then the paper is ejected with the completed print job. Now if a second page is needed, step 7 begins again, where the paper is fed back into the printer. At that point, the job is completed and the print head is parked and the computer is informed that the job successfully printed. All right, now let's look at some inkjet cartridges. So these cartridges contain the print head. You see on the bottom of this print cartridge here, right there, that's the print head. And you actually see some ink smudged across it. It looks like it could stand to be cleaned. So these first 3 right here are the same print cartridges, same print cartridge, just turned in different angles. And you see these little dots along here. This is where the print cartridge, actually the print head, communicates with the printer. And the printer tells the print head on the print cartridge or the ink cartridge what dots right here in this print head to print out or to spit out the ink onto the paper. So that's a print cartridge right there for an inkjet printer. This is a black printer cartridge. Over here, this is an example of a single color print head and print cartridge combination for an HP printer. This one happens to be yellow, and it goes with one of those bubble jet printers that uses cyan, magenta, yellow, and black print cartridges. This is one of the 4 print cartridges that would be used to mix with those other colors to create a multicolor printout. All right, now let's look at some more bubble jet printer photos. Okay, we looked at this one before. Again, this is an all-in-one. This is a printer, fax, scanner, and copier. So in the front here it prints. It can also scan documents up here and then save those on your computer. It can scan documents up here and then fax them. And then it can also scan documents up here and then print them out using the bubble jet printer. So it's a bubble jet copier. That's an all-in-one device. Here you see the paper tray. The paper would go in there, would be picked up with the pickup rollers, and go into the print carriage. The print head and inkjet cartridge would print on the paper, and then it would be ejected out the front here. Here's where the print cartridges go. These are inserted over here. This one, this printer uses black and then a color cartridge. This is a photo printer, a dedicated photo printer. And this is one we didn't look at before. This is a higher resolution, more professional grade bubble jet printer. It has a dedicated paper tray down here, and you see it still follows the same paper path as the other HP printer I showed you. But it has a little display on the front. It can show you the photos if you're going to print photos. And on the top up here, this is a flatbed that opens up, and you can lay down a document and you could scan it or use this printer as a copier. So this is a higher resolution, a better quality, more professional bubble jet printer. All right, so we're done talking about bubble jet printers, and we can move on and talk about laser printers. Now let's talk about some important laser printer components. First off, we have the toner cartridge. The toner cartridge is what holds the toner. Now, just so you know, I'm going to go through each of these components, and then when we're done, I'm going to show you diagrams and photographs of all these different components, so you'll get to see what they look like. But first, I'm going to give you some important definitions about each one. So, back to the toner cartridge. The toner cartridge holds the toner, and you can think of the toner as sort of the consumable ink for the laser printer. Now, it's not ink at all, but it's the consumable good that the laser printer uses and puts down on the paper to make your text and graphics. And you have to keep refilling that toner as you print more pages. So similar to how a bubble jet printer has to have a ink cartridge that you have to keep refilling or replacing in actuality, same thing with a laser printer. You have to keep replacing this toner cartridge that holds the toner. Now that toner is not ink, like I said. The toner is carbon with polyester resins and iron oxide particles. So it has some metal in it because that it's magnetic material, and it can be manipulated with magnets, which is what the laser printer does. Now the developer is inside the toner cartridge, and it's what carries the toner through the cartridge. There's the drum. The drum is also inside the cartridge typically, and when I say typically, I mean I say that because some laser printers can have a separate drum versus the toner cartridge. But today, commonly, it's inside the toner cartridge. Now, it holds a static charge when it's not exposed to light. So basically, the drum has to work in the dark. You don't want there to be light around. Now, toner is stuck on the drum and applied to the paper in the necessary shapes and amounts. Now, that's a very simplified way of saying it right there. But the drum is what's used to collect that toner, and then the laser scanning assembly shines on the drum and gets rid of the pieces of toner that aren't wanted. The cleaning blade is what continuously scrapes off the useful toner that can be reused to keep the drum clean. Now it's the high voltage power supply that supplies the voltage needed to energize the charging and transfer coronas. The DC power supply powers other components of the printer between 5 and 24 volts. The paper transport assembly is what moves the paper through the printers, and it contains the pickup and registration rollers. So part of the job of the paper transport assembly is to pick up that piece of paper out of the paper tray and put it into the laser printer. Now there's the stepper motor. That's what turns the rollers, and it uses very little electricity to do that. There's the fuser assembly, or fuser. This is what fuses the plastic toner particles to the paper. There's the primary controller circuitry. This is what converts the computer data, so your print job from the printer, to a language that the printer can use. Then there may be the ozone filter. Newer laser printers don't have ozone filters. Older laser printers produced a chemical called ozone, which was a reactive gas that was created by the corona wires. Now, to get rid of this ozone, they had to have an ozone filter, but newer printers should not have that. All right, now let's talk about the 6 steps of the electrophotographic print process. This can be abbreviated the EP process. I like to say that because it's easier. And the EP process is broken up, like I said, into these 6 steps of cleaning, charging, writing, developing, transferring, and fusing. So let's go look at some diagrams to learn more about these 6 important steps. All right, first off, let me show you a diagram here of an entire printer. This is just a basic mock-up of a laser printer. Here you have the print cartridge, or the paper cartridge, I should say. This is your paper tray. Your paper's inside here. The pickup rollers are what picks up the paper out of the tray and then sends it inside the laser printer to be printed. So the toner cartridge is this whole area right here these rollers, or most of these rollers, kind of this dotted line, that's your toner cartridge. So you have your laser assembly over here. The laser beam shines out of that to the mirror. The mirror shines the laser down into the toner cartridge, down onto the drum. And your paper feeds through this toner cartridge, through the developer, the drum, and then finally to the fuser, and then up and out of the laser printer, and then that page is completed. So let's move on, and let's look at a side view of the EP process. So again, here you have your paper. You have your paper coming into the printer from the paper tray with the pickup rollers. It goes through here. You have your toner up here. This whole thing, this is your toner cartridge. The laser shines, it reflects off the mirror down onto the drum, and the charging corona charges the material on the drum, or charges the drum so that the toner will stick to the drum. This is your developing roller. The toner comes out here, rolls onto the drum, and it's the corona wire down here that transfers that material from the drum onto the paper. The paper rolls through here into the fuser unit where it's heated and pressure is put on it to fuse that toner onto the paper. There's this waste toner receptacle here where the cleaning scraper scrapes off any useful toner that's left over so it can be reused. So that's the basics of the EP process. Now we're going to go into those 6 steps in more detail. The first phase of the EP process is cleaning. In this phase, the rubber blade, the cleaning blade shown here in this diagram, is used to scrape away toner left on the drum into a used toner receptacle. That's this right here, the used toner hopper. And that way, the drum is cleaned as it turns around here and is constantly reused and recovered in toner, and applies that toner down to the paper. So this is the cleaning step. All right, in the second step, which is charging, the special wire or roller called the charging corona right here, this wire is charged from the high voltage power supply. And this high voltage power supply charges this with an electric current, and then it rolls around the drum and charges the drum. So that's phase 2, or step 2, charging. All right, step 3 is writing. In the writing phase, the laser scanning assembly, which is located right here, has a rotating mirror, and it shines the laser beam over to the fixed mirror, and that fixed mirror shines the laser beam onto the drum. Now the drum is turning at the same time, and what happens is wherever the laser beam touches the drum, the photosensitive drum's charge is severely reduced, and there's a slight negative charge. Now as the drum rotates, a pattern of exposed areas is formed representing the image, that's this here, that's representing the image that's going to be printed. At this point, the controller sends a signal to the pickup roller to feed a piece of paper into the printer, where it stops at the registration rollers. Now what happens in the developing phase, step 4, is a metallic roller called the developer, right here, the developing cylinder, is rolling inside the cartridge. Now it acquires a electrical charge from the high voltage power supply on this developer. Now the toner sticks to this roller as it turns around because there's a magnet located inside here. Now while the developing roller rotates towards the drum, the toner acquires the charge of the roller. So this toner stuck on the outside acquires a charge. Now when the toner comes between the developing roller and the drum, right here, so where these two meet, the toner is attracted to the areas that have been exposed by the laser. So the laser's been shining down on the drum, and the laser's been touching certain areas. And the toner's also repelled from the unexposed area. And then the toner transfers from the developer onto the drum. Now the drum has the toner stuck to it where the laser has written, and the drum continues to rotate until the developed toner is ready to be transferred to the paper. Alright, the next step here is step 5. In step 5 of the EP process, this is where the toner is transferred to the paper. Now, the controller inside the printer at this point notifies the registration rollers that the paper should be fed into the printer, or past the registration rollers, I should say. The registration roller moves the paper underneath the photosensitive drum right here. So in this case, this is our drum, this is our paper. The process of transferring the image now can begin in this step 5 transferring step. So the toner is going to be transferred onto the paper. The controller sends the signal to the charging corona wire or roller, depending on which type the printer has, and this wire then acquires a strong positive charge and applies that to the paper. So now the paper is being charged here by the corona wire. Now the paper, with it being charged, then pulls the toner from the drum onto the paper because of this charge. And once the registration roller moves the paper past the corona wire, the static eliminator strip right down here removes all charge from that line of the paper. Now, if this didn't happen, if that strip wasn't there, the paper would attract itself to the toner cartridge and cause a paper jam. So it's important that this work. So now the toner is held in place by this weak static charge, and the paper keeps on going in this direction with this toner on top of it in the shape of the characters or graphics that we want to display on the paper. But if you were to pull it out at this point, and I've done this before, you can just brush your fingers across the words on the page and the toner just falls off. Alright, so step 6, the last step, is the fusing process. So in this process, you see the fusing roller over here, and you've got this pressure roller and fusing roller. So in the fusing step, the registration roller continues the paper towards the fuser. The fuser grabs the paper, and the registration roller pushes it only for a short time more. And once it reaches the fuser here, the fuser is in control of that paper. The paper passes through the fuser, and at about 350 degrees, the fusing roller melts the polyester resin of the toner, and the rubberized pressure roller presses it permanently into the paper. The paper continues on through the fuser, and then it goes up here and it exits the printer. Now, once that paper has exited the printer, it trips a sensor that tells the printer to finish the process with a cleaning step. At this point, the printer can print another page, and then this whole process can begin again for the next piece of paper that needs to be printed. Okay, I wanted to show you this other slide here that shows a few of the different rollers. Now, here you see the feed roller that's in the front. Here you see the registration rollers, which are down here by the toner cartridge. Here you see the fuser rollers, which are up here by the fuser. And then the exit rollers roll the paper out of the printer and eject it into this exiting output paper tray up here. All right, let's look and see if there's any more slides to talk about. We went through the EP process again, and that brings us back to the start. So I know we've gone through all the different slides that we needed to go through to cover the 6 steps of the electrophotographic printer process. So it's very important for the A+ exam that you're familiar with these steps and that you know each step and what it does. So just so you know, and we can have a little quiz to make sure you know, I'm going to open up a Word document here. And what I've got is the 6 steps of the EP process, and I've got the first letter of each one of these steps. And I'm going to ask you to give me the word that goes with this letter, and these steps are in order, starting with step number 1, going down to step number 6. All right, so what was the first step of the EP process? It was on the screen here just a second ago. Step 1 was cleaning. So I'm going to fill in cleaning there. So the first step was where the cleaning blade cleaned the drum. Took that extra unused toner and put it in a depository there. In the used toner hopper, they call it. All right, step number 2. In step number 2, the corona was what? Charged. So that's the charging step. So we got cleaning, then charging. Then there's step 3. Step 3 is where the laser beam touches the drum and charges it so that the toner will stick in that shape. And what's the W stand for? Writing. All right, then there's the step 4. This is the phase where, I can't tell you what it is, or else you'll know what step 4 is. The big rotating thing, not the drum, touches the drum, and the toner is transferred from this thing to the drum. So what's that thing? That thing is the developer. And step 4 is the developing phase. All right, then there's T. What does T stand for? T is where the toner is transferred to the paper. So that's what step 5 stands for. Transferring. And then the last step is where there's that loose toner on the page, and the page goes through this thing in the printer, and it heats the toner and melts it onto the page. And what's that thing called that melts the toner onto the page? The fuser, right? So this is the fusing step. So those are the 6 steps of the EP process. We have cleaning, charging, writing, developing, transferring, and fusing. All right, I'm going to close that out. We'll go back to our slides. So you can try to remember these 6 steps by using those same letters, C, C, W, D, T, F. C, C, W, D, T, F. All right, let's look at a few photos now of laser printers. And not just diagrams, I want to show you some real laser printers. So first off here you have a color laser printer. This is a Ricoh color laser printer, and it has special toner cartridges with different colors. You see these different colors up here. These are each different toner cartridges. So that's a color laser printer. All right, next up is a toner cartridge. This is what the outside box of a toner cartridge looks like. You can see what laser printer it fits. Toner cartridges only fit specific laser printers. So this is just the box of a toner cartridge. Next up here we have a toner cartridge. This is the side view of a toner cartridge. You see all the gears here. So inside here would be a toner repository. There's a developer and drum. All right, this is the bottom, and here you see the drum. That's what that is there. There's a little bit better view. Side view. Here's the front of it, I guess you could call it. This is actually the side, or I guess you could call it the back, depends what way you're looking at it. But this is the side with the handle. So you would put this into the laser printer, And this is the side that goes in the laser printer. This is the side you see. Tells you what model this toner cartridge goes with, and it has a little handle here. Alright, then what I'm doing here is I'm opening this up so you can see inside. There's a flap that covers this. And this is the front of the laser printer where the toner cartridge is inserted. So you insert the toner cartridge in here, close these doors, and that's what it looks like once you insert the toner cartridge and close the doors. You can see this is an IBM printer, has a number of paper trays down here. And there's a side view. So this is the front of the laser printer here. This opens up, the toner cartridge goes inside, the paper goes through and comes up on the top. This printer has 1, 2, 3 paper trays attached to it. Actually, it looks like a fourth one right in there. 1, 2, 3, 4 paper trays. And back here on the back, it has what they call a duplexing unit. So a duplexing unit allows the paper to come in, be printed on one side, go through here, have it turned over, and then print it again on the back side. So that way you can get text on both sides of the page. So this is an add-on unit. It's a duplexing unit. All right, so we looked at all of our different pictures here, photos of our laser printers. So I'm going to close this out. And now we can move on. And let's talk a little bit about printer consumables. So what is it that you have to feed these printers to keep them going, to keep them printing out just more and more pages every day, every week? At many offices, there's people who are dedicated to, maintaining these printers, clearing paper jams, supplying more paper to put in the printer, supplying more toner, which includes the drum, developer, and fuser, and in some cases supplying labels if those printers are printing labels, or sometimes transparencies. Now check with your manufacturer before you print labels and transparencies on your laser printer to make sure that your laser printer supports those types of labels. There's many different types of labels and transparencies, and you don't want to run them through a laser printer and have them get all gummed up or jammed up. Sometimes they can even ruin your laser printer. Then there's forms. Sometimes people will use pre-printed forms, and that's how they will print out certain things like statements or invoices, whatever it is they need to print on their laser printer. So those are some of the consumables for laser printers. Toner cartridges, by the way, are rated in how many pages you can get out of a toner cartridge. Sometimes there's extended life toner cartridges that give you more pages than the standard toner cartridge. And that's something you need to watch out for. When you shop and compare toner cartridges, you can buy aftermarket toner cartridges or OEM toner cartridges made by third parties instead of by the original manufacturer of the printer. Then there's printer options. What kind of options do you want to add to your printer? Besides just however it comes stock, later you may decide that you need to add some more trays to allow you to add more paper to the printer. Stackers are add-ons that take the output from the printer and stack it and sort it into different types of output. You can buy hard drives to allow the printer to spool more data or to reproduce jobs at a later point. You can buy software that talks to the printers, drivers, print managers, software that inventories your printers and upgrades your printers. You can buy fax boards for your printers to turn them into fax machines. And many people more and more are buying finishers. Finishers go on the back of larger printers. They'll take your output and they might fold it for you. They might punch holes or they might staple it all together, or all of those things. All right, now let's talk about printer and scanner interfaces. Now, to connect your printer to the network or to your computer, you have to have some sort of interface on the printer. Now, for the A+ exam, we need to know about the different types of printer interfaces. So the first one is parallel. Parallel has been around for a long time. It's sort of the classic older printer interface. On one side, you have a 25 pin, what looks like a serial cable that plugs into your computer. On the other side, you have what they call a Centronics port, which is a large port with some clips on each side that connects to the printer. This would be used to directly connect your printer to your computer. However, today that's really been replaced with USB. And serial has also really been replaced with USB as well. USB is just much more convenient and easier to use. You can put hubs in between your computer and your printer, and you can add more peripherals than what you have USB ports for on your computer. Another option would be network, some sort of network interface. Could be an Ethernet port or a Jet Direct card, they call them on HP printers, that go into the printer, and on the back side of the printer you have a wired Ethernet port that connects the printer to the network directly. One benefit of this is the printer can be shared on the network, and many users can print to that printer. Whereas with a USB, parallel, or serial, your printer is directly connected to your computer. That's the same thing with FireWire or IEEE 1394, which is FireWire. It's another way to connect your printer to your computer, but it's just a dedicated connection. Network to me is always the way to go. If you're going to be sharing that printer with anyone else, you might as well put it on the network and connect it to a print server, and then everyone can print to that printer. Another option is wireless. Wireless, of course, is just a type of networking, but you don't have to connect a physical cable to the printer. You can print to some printers using Bluetooth protocol, but most people use 802.11. You can also use infrared. Another option is SCSI. However, SCSI just isn't as popular as it was at one point for higher end printers. Today you can print to printers with either USB, wired networking, or wireless networking. To me, those are the three realistic options in use today. Now let's talk about scanners. Here in this photo you have your typical flatbed scanner. You lay your document down here on this glass sheet, and you close the top, and then the scanner scans the document. You can have a single-sided scanner or a double-sided scanner. You can have color scanners, black and white or grayscale scanners. And then you can also have scanners where you feed the page through, that they're not flatbeds. You can have scanners such as flatbeds that have sheet feeders on the top, kind of like a copier, where you stack your pages up there and they're automatically fed through here very quickly. So the different components of a scanner are listed here. First off, there's the scanning head, there's a light source and mirrors, there's the stabilizer bar, there's the charge coupled device, or the CCD array, or contact image server, there's the stepper motor, and there's the interface. Now let's take a look at the diagram. Alright, this diagram shows you the basics of how a scanner works. So here you have a light source that sends light, bounces that light off the document, it's seen by the mirror, that mirror goes to this mirror, then it goes through some filters, then through some lenses, and to the CCD, where it takes the image of that document shown here and images it over here. Then it sends that digital image of this document to the computer so that it can be saved or manipulated in some other way. So that's the basic scanning process. That's how it works. Alright, we looked at our diagram. We talked about how there's flatbed scanners, there's sheet-fed scanners, and there's handheld scanners, very small handheld devices. Well, next, let's talk about configuring a printer, the basics of configuring a printer on a computer, and I'm going to show you how it's done. First off, you need to consider your power for the printer. Of course, it has to be connected to the power, and how you're going to connect that device to your computer. Is it going to be locally attached, such as a USB cable, or it was... When it comes to connecting your printer to your computer, first you need to consider that your printer will require power, so you have to plug it into an AC wall outlet. Second, you'll have to consider how are you going to connect that printer to your computer. So will it be a locally connected cable, such as a USB cable, or will it be over the network? So does that printer have a wireless adapter, or does it have an Ethernet jack where it's going to plug onto the local LAN? Next, you'll need to make sure that you have the updated device drivers or other software that will be needed to connect the computer's operating system to the printer. How is the computer going to communicate with the printer? Well, it needs a device driver to do that. So make sure you have the device driver. Next, you'll have to install that driver on your computer and tell the computer where the printer is located. Is it on a USB port? Is it on the network? Then you'll configure any options or default settings you want, and then print a test page, and your printer will be set up. So with that, let's go set up a test printer. I don't have a real printer hooked up that I'm going to set up, but I'm going to set up a test printer, and you'll see the basic concept of how to add a new printer to a computer. So with that, I'm going to go to Start, Settings, Printers and Faxes. Now here I have some of my default printers listed. It shows me the status of my different printers. I have documents, 0 documents in the queue, and some of these printers are ready. One of them is opening. This one, you notice, is a network printer, and it says it's opening, so it's probably having trouble communicating with that network printer, and there it went to ready. So to add a printer, I click Add a Printer. And it says, this wizard help you install a printer or make a printer connection. I'll say Next. So the first question is this going to be a locally attached printer or a network printer? I'm just going to say it's a locally attached printer. It wants to try to find that printer through Device Manager. I'm going to say, no, let's not do that, because I don't have a real printer connected, so it wouldn't find one anyway. I'll click Next. And now it says, where is the printer connected? Is it on the LPT port, which is my parallel printer port, LPT 1, 2, or 3? Is it on a serial port, COM 1 through 7? Do I want to print to a file? Or is it some other type of specialized printer? I'm going to just say it's an LPT port. I'll say Next. Now it wants to know what type of printer I have. So let's say I'm just going to scroll down here. I'm going to press H for HP, the most popular type of printer out there. I'm going to scroll down, and I'm just going to pick a common laser printer. Let's go down to HP LaserJet and find HP LaserJet. Let's go for 5,000 PostScript. That's what the PostScript is PS right there. PS stands for PostScript. Or I could say I have a disk from my manufacturer of the printer. I'll say Next. Now it says, what do I want to call this printer? I'll take the default there, and it says, do you want to use this printer as my default printer? Sure, let's do that. Now it says, do you want to share this printer over the network and use your PC as a print server? I don't want to do that. If I had just a few computers, that might be a fine option for a home or a small business. But for a company, medium to large size company, you wouldn't want to share a network printer off of your computer, making it a print server. So I'll say Next. It says, do you want to print a test page? So this would be our final test to see if all the configuration we did really worked. I'm going to say no, because the printer really isn't attached. Say Next. And basically this is the Are You Sure screen. So here I'm going to click Finish. It copies in the driver from my saved operating system files that happen to be on my computer already. Otherwise, you might have to insert your Windows operating system CD. Then I click Finish. And my printer is added right there. HP LaserJet 5000 series PS. Notice how it's got the little checkbox to it, that little circle with a check. That means that this is my default printer. Now you see this other printer here with the hand next to the printer. That means the printer is shared on the network. Now if I right click on this printer, I can go to Properties, and I can go in and configure the sharing, what port I want this printer on, some advanced settings, security, device settings, what size paper do I want to use, all sorts of other options. All right, so that's the basics of adding a printer to your computer. And in the technician video, in this video series, we're going to go into more detail, more troubleshooting, all sorts of other printer options and things you need to know. But for the essentials video, that's what you need to know right there. We're going to move on to our next slide. All right, now let's talk about some common printer problems you could experience. First off, with dot matrix printers. With a dot matrix printer, the print head hammers away on the ribbon, and that ribbon has ink. And over time, if the ribbon isn't used, it can dry out. And when the print head hammers away on it, the text looks very faded, if you can see anything at all. A lot of times, replacing that ribbon will help out a lot with print quality. Then you could have a problem with your print head. It could not be firing on all the dots. It might look like you have missing dots out of your characters. You could have a problem with the stepper motor. That's what moves the print head back and forth across the page. And of course, you could have paper jams. And if you're having paper jams, you might look for a perforation or a little piece of paper stuck somewhere in the printer path. However, dot matrix printers, I should point out, are like the most reliable and heavy-duty printer that you can buy. They just keep on printing. Very reliable and need very little maintenance. They're low cost compared to lasers or bubble jet printers. However, the quality, of course, just isn't the same on a dot matrix as a bubble jet or laser. The next one is inkjet or bubble jet printers. Of course, you could have a dried out ink cartridge if you haven't used it in a while. You could have a leaking ink cartridge. You could have poor print quality. And a lot of times, if you'll go into the tools that came with the printer and you choose alignment or you choose clean print head, a lot of times that'll solve a lot of your printing problems. Next one is laser printers. With laser printers, commonly, of course, you could have a paper jam caused by a piece of paper stuck in the printer, the wrong type of paper, or a worn pickup roller. You might need to replace or clean your rollers. You could also have blank pages coming out of the printer. Of course, this tells you that the toner cartridge might be empty. The transfer corona assembly could have a problem, or maybe the high voltage power supply has a problem. You could also have problems with all black pages. All black pages is a big waste of toner, but obviously there's something wrong inside the printer where the pages are coming out all black. You could have vertical black lines on each page. This can be caused by a groove or scratch in the drum. You can have vertical white lines across the page, and these are usually caused by some piece of foreign matter caused or stuck in the transfer corona wire. If you clean out your printer real good, you might be able to solve that. You could have smudging. You could have ghosting. Ghosting is where you can see light images of previously printed pages on the current page. This is either caused by bad erasure lamps or a broken cleaning blade. You could have your printer printing out a lot of garbage. This a lot of times is caused by the wrong driver. All right, so there's a lot of different things that can happen with laser printers. These are just some of the more common problems and solutions. And with that, we've reached the end of our video on printers and scanners. In this video, we learned the components of printers and scanners, the interfaces that connect them, and how to troubleshoot printers and scanners. Of special importance to the A+ exam are the 6 steps of the EP printing process. You should be very familiar with how laser printers work and the functions of the different components. I appreciate you watching this video on printers and scanners. Thank you very much.